To City Hall. My name is Jill Rose. I'm the city engineer for the city of Troy. Dan Hoying is the lead with LJB for this project, for the McKaig Road Phase 4 project. I appreciate you guys all taking the time to come. Dan will actually kind of present, and then there will be definitely time afterwards to ask questions, and then even after that we'll kind of break up into small groups and you guys can come up and ask questions. We have a couple other boards. We just didn't want to set too many boards up in the event that we couldn't see, we wanted you to see the projector. So, okay, with that, I'll give it over to Dan.
Great, thank you very much, Jill. And again, thanks for spending your Thursday evening with us. Hopefully the last cold Thursday evening for a few days. I appreciate you all coming out and hope that we'll be able to provide some good information for you, answer many of the questions that maybe you've brought with you already. And if you have any of those questions when we get to the end, though, but like Jill said, definitely be time for that. We appreciate the opportunity to work with the city on this project and really continuation of this corridor. Much of the LJB team was involved in the projects that just were completed in recent years on the other two phases of McKaig. So starting at Monroe and going to the railroad tracks was the first phase. It's actually called Phase 2. Phase 3 picked up from there at the tracks and continued all the way through the alley west of Lake or Haywood Elementary School. And so that construction, this same team, for the most part from LJB, was the design engineer for that project as well. I have with me tonight Paul Goodhue from LJB. He's our lead traffic engineer, did a lot of the traffic analysis on this project. And I also have Frank Aransky, who is works for American Structure Point, a sub-consultant to us. American Structure Point and Frank's involvement, they've designed more roundabout in the state of Ohio, I believe, than anybody else. And so when we looked at this project and saw this intersection and the opportunity to even consider a roundabout, we wanted to make sure that we were able to provide the best team and the expertise in the state on that. And so that's a big part of why Frank is here. And Frank is doing peer review on the work that we're doing. So as we design it, we're sending things to him, and he's then doing that peer review to make sure that if in fact that is the solution that goes forward, that we have the best and the most quality project there for the city and for all of you. So with that, can everybody see? I'm looking at you, sir. Can you see okay? If I walk, I'll try to move around a little bit, and if you can't see it, I've been standing in the same spot for 5 minutes, just wave your hands and I'll move out of your way, and I'll stand in somebody else's way. So this is an overview map of the project limits. The project starts at the I-75 overpass along McKaig. McKaig, of course, being right here, and then continues to basically this alley right here that's on the west side of the Haywood Elementary property. So continuing through the Dorset intersection, and then the smaller side street intersections continue all the way over. This is Lake, and so you're just seeing right here on the edge of the screen the parking lot for Haywood Elementary and that west side. So those are our project limits. The existing conditions, you're all probably very familiar with the existing conditions. There's an all-way stop today at the Dorset intersection, and one lane in each direction, but it's a really wide one lane. It has parking on both sides, not really no pavement markings or demarcation of where that lane starts or stops and where the parking starts or stops. And so it really kind of functions for the most part when people aren't parked there as a really wide one lane in each direction kind of pavement section. By way of traffic volumes, it's a big deal to Paul and his guys how many vehicles are actually out there. So McKaig sees about 6,500 cars a day on average, and Dorset is about 8,000. So they're pretty evenly matched, which is an important part of a roundabout consideration. But Dorset is a slightly more major movement, and so just slightly more vehicles per day there. One of the things that we've heard and experienced as we've observed and driven the corridor ourselves is really speed concerns along the whole corridor. I don't know if it's noticeable to you and as you've perceived that as you continue into the city on the other phases of McKaig, but the lane widths there are narrower than what's on this section. They're about an 11-foot wide lane with a parking area, and the goal of that in traffic terms is called traffic calming. The narrower that roadway appears to be, as long as it's wide enough to pass your vehicle, is effective in slowing vehicles down. If you're on a freeway, if the road were as wide as the freeway, you'd want to drive it at 65 or 70 or 75, chief, 75 miles per hour. But on a road like this, it's signed, posted speed limit is 25 miles per hour. Dorset is 35, correct. But for the McKaig corridor, most of our work on this project is to be on McKaig. We'll do what we need to do on Dorset to make sure the intersection and everything comes together. But for McKaig Road, starting at least at Dorset intersection, is 25 miles per hour all the way into the city. And we'd really like it to function that way. That's the way the neighborhood is built up, and we think that that's the most effective way to get people through. So we're trying to make the infrastructure match that. So goals of the project, we want to make sure that that intersection, I think a couple times a day, right, around 8 o'clock, around 5 o'clock, the delays at that all-way stop between 3 and with the school, right, so depending on the day of the week and whether school's in, if it's summer or not, the delays at that intersection can back up, right? You're waiting in a long line as everybody comes up to a four-way stop with multiple lanes. Everybody's looking at each other like, are you going or am I going? Which one of us is going next? And it just isn't very efficient from a traffic standpoint. The main reason that we're even looking at the intersection though is just to continue to upgrade the infrastructure. The curbs, the catch basins, the sidewalks, the pavement condition was all accomplished through the first 2 phases of McKaig. We want to continue that on for the rest of McKaig, and that's why the state has committed funding to the project. $800,000 has been committed from the state to the city of Troy to improve this section of McKaig. The city has established a budget for the project, a construction budget of $2 million. So that's kind of what we're working in. How do we make sure we're inside that budget by using the state grant, the state money, to the effect that we can. Your council and your engineering staff has brought that money to Troy. Let's make sure we're getting our bang out of it. The construction schedule is important because the school is as close as it is. Troy Christian, we know, is a major driver of traffic there. And so we really want to make sure that that intersection stays open during the school year. At the very least, the project will be complete by September of 2019. We think that it could happen sooner than that, and we'd like to plan for it to happen sooner than that. But depending on how that construction goes, we may need to schedule the intersection work into next summer. And so I'm showing this as September of 19 as being the date that we fully expect the project to be complete, construction to be done, barrels to be gone, and you guys to be able to use the road as you normally would. It will certainly not take like 18 months to build though, so don't hear that. It's just, whenever we get started, it's going to be done on the 19th, by September of 19. So the first thing we started, we recognized the traffic issue at the Dorset and McKaig intersection. And so we set Paul's team off on doing traffic counts. They counted both at the intersection as well as the entrance to Troy Christian School. And they began an intersection analysis, considering these 3 alternatives. Maintaining the all-way stop that's there today in some configuration, number of lanes, but maintaining that all-way stop control, a traffic signal, or a roundabout. And as we got into that, we've prepared kind of a layout, and we have a board of this that we'll have up afterwards if you can't see this in real clear detail. But our traffic signal or our all-way stop alternatives have basically the same lane configurations. There's a through lane in each direction, and there's a left turn lane in each direction. So a little narrower than what's out there today. But when you get to the intersections, because of some truck turning movements, this actually has a fairly significant impact on the properties that are at the corner. The need for additional right-of-way, the need to widen those and make it so that people can stay in their lane when they make those turns, and for that traffic signal to operate appropriately. There's some impacts on this corner and this corner particularly that we're really kind of driving that. And there's some other things we'll talk about that traffic signal. So that was the first kind of geometric layout for the all-way and the signal. And then the second one is a roundabout alternative. That because we don't need the turn lanes in a roundabout, we can actually narrow the pavement up a little bit. And it keeps about the same impact, but you can see here it allows us to reduce some of the impacts, particularly on this corner, but really on this corner as well, and leave more of that parking area, reduce some of those impacts because we don't have as wide of a pavement section on either side. So we looked at those 3 criteria. These are the 3 criteria that we used to evaluate it. Level of service is our way of saying how well does it operate. Safety, obviously. We want to make sure that what we put out there is a safe operation, particularly with school kids going to school as often, and then of course construction cost. And so this table kind of summarizes our analysis against those 3 criteria. So I'm going to work across by each condition. So the all-way stop, we know what that level of service is, and we're going to call that poor today. We know what that backup looks like. Paul can tell you what the delay is and all those things out of the traffic study, but we're going to call that subjectively poor. From a safety standpoint, it'll be about the same in the new configuration as it is today. It's basically maintained. You have a stop condition, and so you really don't have that many significant accidents there, right? This is not a safety-driven project as it stands today. Everybody comes to the intersection and they stop. There's been about 20 accidents in the last 3 years, and those are probably as many as we would guess are just people like looking at each other and both thinking that the other one was going. The nod meant you go instead of I'm going, you know, that kind of thing. And so that's maintained as it is today. And then the construction cost, you can see there. The traffic signal, a better level of service. We can provide more green time to Dorset particularly because it's the more major movement, and it would allow people to kind of continue through without the same delay. When everybody comes to the intersection today, they stop. But from a safety standpoint, we think that it's actually decreased with the signal because all those turning movements that happen are happening now at 35 miles per hour if you're on Dorset, or 25 miles per hour or faster if you're on McKaig. And from the school standpoint particularly, the speed of people operating out there is one of those major concerns. As you come across the freeway bridge, headed into town, if you see a green light, you're just continuing to cruise on at the 45 miles per hour that you were on until you can really neck that pavement down and get people to slow down. The roundabout, when we look at the level of service, it too moves traffic very well, better than the signal. And so we have excellent condition there because it doesn't require changing of lights. Nobody has to stop. You're just waiting on that gap in traffic to move through. From a safety standpoint, we'll show you some slides about that later, but it really improves the safety because the number of places that you could possibly run into somebody are significantly reduced. And they're all coming from the same direction, and it's not head-on crashes, and it's not severe left turn angle crashes. It's an improved condition from that standpoint. For really $75,000 at this point in the process is what we've estimated the difference between a traffic signal for this project and for the roundabout. And so based on that analysis, we said our preferred section is the roundabout. The Federal Highway Administration has published a video that I'd like to take a break from me talking and just show about 8 minutes of that video. And this video is from 2013. And you'll note that some of the feedback that they're getting is as old as 1996, I think. But we'll watch about 8.5 minutes of this, and I will try to stop it then. Looks like it's been playing on me in the background. So let's, well, maybe I can. Why does it want to do that? Yeah, don't start the clock yet.
See, okay, sir. That more than 20 people are killed and many more are seriously injured in crashes at intersections every day in the United States? Did you know that most of these deaths and injuries are due to right-angle crashes that occur at signalized and stop-controlled intersections? How much time do you spend stopped at a red light waiting for the light to change when there is no traffic on the cross street? Did you know there is an intersection alternative that is substantially safer than signalized and stop-controlled intersections and much more efficient? The U.S. DOT's Federal Highway Administration, FHWA, has identified modern roundabout intersections as one of 9 proven life-saving roadway safety strategies. Modern roundabouts are not only safer than traditional signalized and stop-controlled intersections. Where appropriate and properly designed, roundabouts operate more efficiently, often have lower life cycle costs, and result in increased fuel efficiency. So, what is a roundabout? A roundabout is a circular intersection. Traffic flows counterclockwise around a center island. Entering traffic yields to circulating traffic in the roundabout. Channelized approaches using splitter islands deflect traffic as it enters the intersection, slowing speeds. While the vast majority of roundabouts are single lane, 1/4 of the roundabouts in the U.S. have 2 lanes, which also provide safety benefits. Roundabouts with up to 3 lanes have been successfully built. Many roundabouts can be used in low-speed urban environments in lieu of a stop sign or traffic signal. Roundabouts are different from other types of circular intersections that you might have seen. They are not rotaries or the older traffic circles, which are still common in the northeastern United States, which typically have higher speeds and approaches and usually higher speeds within the circle. They may use stop or signal control, or they may require circulating traffic to yield to entering traffic. A roundabout is also not the same thing as a neighborhood traffic circle, typically used on local streets for speed control. Roundabouts have several distinguishing characteristics and benefits, setting them apart from other intersection types. Traffic can move freely through roundabouts. This makes them more efficient than signalized or stop-controlled intersections. Unlike other types of intersections, roundabouts are designed to slow the speed of vehicles entering by deflecting them from a straight line path into the roundabout. Drivers approaching the roundabout have time to judge for gaps in the circulating traffic and either yield or adjust their speed before entering the intersection. This allows for safer entries into circulating traffic. In addition to channelized approaches, signs and pavement markings on the roadway guide drivers to make sure they take the proper entry path. Roundabout intersections can require additional space compared to a traditional intersection, but they may be constructed within the existing right-of-way. Roundabouts eliminate dangerous left turns across opposing traffic lanes and virtually eliminate high-speed right-angle and head-on crashes. While initial construction costs can be higher with roundabouts, they often have a lower operating and maintenance cost than signalized intersections. They can have ongoing costs for lighting and maintaining the landscaping, but unlike a signalized intersection, there is no signal equipment to install, power, and maintain. Roundabouts have longer service lives than traditional intersections, resulting in better economic value over the long term, especially when you factor in the reduction of fatal and injury crashes. Roundabouts are also the greenest intersection alternative, and not only because of their aesthetic appeal. Reduced vehicle idling means fewer emissions and less wasted fuel. Less acceleration and fewer sudden hard stops means quieter, more peaceful transportation through communities. Landscaping in the central island, splitter islands, and along the approaches can further benefit and enhance community livability. With all of these benefits, why aren't all transportation agencies building modern roundabout intersections? One of the biggest reasons transportation agencies overlook this proven intersection safety solution is out of concern that the public just won't accept them. Trying one roundabout is usually all it takes to convince even the biggest skeptic of their benefits.
In the 12 years the department has been building roundabouts, we've had our share of skeptics. But what we found is after the roundabout is built, the skeptics become supportive of the idea, which is a tribute to the time savings and the safety benefits that a roundabout offers.
Some states now have roundabout policies that state that roundabouts should be considered as an intersection alternative. Numerous states like Washington and cities across the country like Carmel, Indiana, have embraced roundabouts and support their development. Washington State now has more than 150 roundabouts, and the city of Carmel, Indiana alone has more than 50 roundabouts, with many more planned.
We were one of the first communities in the Midwest to build roundabouts and make the determination that they work better than stoplights in many, many cases.
A common concern for people that have not experienced driving through a properly designed roundabout is that they won't be able to get used to the new traffic pattern. But studies consistently show just the opposite. The public overwhelmingly supports roundabouts after they are constructed. Older Americans in particular are supportive of roundabouts.
By 2025, a quarter of all drivers in the United States will be over the age of 65. Intersections are the single most dangerous traffic environment for drivers of any age, with left-hand turns being the single most dangerous traffic maneuver that any of us can make. 40% of all crashes that involve drivers over the age of 65 occur at intersections. This is nearly twice the rate of experienced younger drivers. AARP would like to see more roundabouts constructed because of the many safety benefits that they present for drivers of all ages.
As with all new traffic treatments, thorough public education, effective signing, and pavement markings are key to educating all drivers on new traffic patterns. So, are roundabouts safe for other road users? In general, pedestrians face far less risk at roundabouts than traditional intersections, primarily because of the slower speeds and the elimination of turns across the pedestrian crosswalks. Splitter islands both shorten the crossing distance for pedestrians and allow them to cross one direction of traffic at a time. All of this adds up to increased safety. There is ongoing research to determine the most effective strategies for making roundabouts accessible for visually impaired pedestrians. The U.S. Access Board has been active in the development of design guidelines for roundabouts. The National Cooperative Highway Research Program, NCHRP, is also researching a range of geometric designs, traffic control devices, and other treatments to make roundabouts more accessible to pedestrians with vision impairments. Bicyclists can dismount and use the pedestrian crosswalk, or experienced bicyclists can ride through the roundabout. What about trucks and other large vehicles? Are they able to navigate through roundabouts? Roundabouts can be built to accommodate the turning radii of large trucks and trailers, just like any other intersection. Roundabouts generally have truck aprons, a slightly raised area around the inner circle that provide trucks, buses, and other large vehicles additional room to navigate the roundabout. So what?
Okay. So I appreciate the break on my voice for the time being. Oh. Is my remote still working? Yeah, great. So that was a lot of general information, right? The Federal Highway Administration doesn't know much about McKaig and Dorset. Yes, sir. You have a quick question?
Is the intersection big enough for a roundabout?
Yeah, we'll talk about that. And I'm glad you asked. That is one of the concerns. And the one example I think was from Maryland. They showed where they still were able to foot that roundabout inside the existing intersection. But it's a lot bigger intersection in both before and after than what McKaig and Dorset is. So yes, we will talk about that. So the capacity of this intersection, I mentioned the traffic volume, 6,500 to 8,000. In the peak hour, there's about 1,400 vehicles that enter that intersection during that highest hour. And while conditions always vary, a good rule of thumb for a single lane roundabout like what we would propose here is about 1,900 vehicles. So we're at about 75% of the full capacity. And really the traffic volumes along McKaig are fairly consistent dating back for the last decade. So in total, they've gone up and they've gone down, but it's been about the same for that time. So we believe that there's ample capacity in a single lane roundabout, so we would not need something that's larger than that. We talked a little bit about truck volumes. There are not a lot of trucks at this intersection, but there are about 12 in the 12 hours that we counted, and there are a few more that go down, and they mostly come from the west and go south on Dorset, and then the reverse movement as well. So our traffic cameras picked them up, and we made sure that we cataloged them and kind of tried to understand what they were doing. And the operation of that, you saw I'll show you some turning movements about how the layout of this intersection would accommodate that. And then obviously school bus is another part of that operational consideration. So I'm not sure how well you can see the green lines. We have these. I'd be happy to put these slides up later if you wish. But basically, inside the roundabout, this gray area in the center is called that truck apron. If you saw the truck, it's a slightly raised area where the back tires of the truck are designed to bump up over our top, and they ride on that different surface. But it's likely to be concrete, whereas the rest of the pavement would be asphalt. So if you or I are driving your car, it's not a comfortable movement, and so you would follow the asphalt, the black or gray path. But the truck would turn out, and their back wheels are designed to go up and ride on that apron. So it provides them the capacity without allowing for people to just blow straight through the intersection because it's a big, wide open expanse of asphalt. And that works the same on the outside edges. You'll see these little corners here and here are locations where we've done that on the outside as well so that the truck can appropriately move through and make those turning movements. The buses are similar, just not as large, and they don't have the articulation. But we don't want to design them to need to go up on that truck apron. We'd like the buses to be able to make that movement without bouncing the kids out of their seats as they bounce up and over that truck. So this layout has been done to allow for the bus to make this left turn, the bus to make this right turn, without getting up on those aprons. Safety. So those are kind of the operational components. From a safety standpoint, this is the difference between a roundabout intersection and either the all-way stop or the signal. the different colors that may be tough to see, but in total there are total conflict points of 8. Places where two vehicles are coming together and have the opportunity to hit each other under kind of normal operation. In a roundabout there are 8, and in a signalized or an all-way stop intersection there are 32. But the big difference is that there are no blue dots here, which are these crossing movements. And in this intersection, those are the serious accidents. Those are the ones that somebody turned left in front of somebody that's coming southbound at full 35 miles per hour, 40 miles per hour, and where you don't see somebody and you get into that head-on or that left turn crash. The lady from my ARP was talking about how severe those left turn crashes are. So there are none of those in this. It's just the primary safety benefit. And that's for vehicles. Similar situation for pedestrians. When you cross the street in a roundabout, you really, if I'm standing here wanting to cross the south leg of Dorset, I'm looking to my left for one vehicle, the vehicle that's exiting this roundabout. And then I cross and I can stand in this splitter island before looking south to see if there's another vehicle coming north. And those are the only ones that we're really looking at. Bill, did you have a quick question?
Normally on an intersection, if you're in a crosswalk, the pedestrian has the right of way. Is that true here? Or am I wrong? Yes.
No, you're right. And yes, they do have the right of way here. There's no stop, but you know, there's no red light to go on. So yes, you're looking, but the pedestrian is making the choice that this is the gap that I want to get out in and go. Now once the pedestrian is in the crosswalk, they have the right of way. So, but you know, in this condition, if I'm here and I'm making this, I'm coming south, this right turner is one of those dangerous movements because the person that's making that right turn, potentially on red, is looking for, is there somebody coming from my left, instead of is that pedestrian stepping off from the curb on my right. So just, again, a reduced number of those crossing points, and the speeds are slower. So I know you guys are all real familiar, you all live in Troy, right? So you're all very familiar with the Troy Circle. This is a scale drawing of the two, just to help you kind of understand maybe how they could fit inside each other. So this is, on the left is the Troy Circle, and this is the proposed intersection size. The difference between them, if I measure across this green, this inside circle, the part that you can't drive on, that's 115 feet here downtown. And the one we're proposing, the blue area here, is 26 feet across. So you can do the math on how much smaller that space is. You want to operate through this intersection much slower. The approach and the operating speeds on McKaig are slower than they are on Main Street. And the volumes, and we don't have access management items like people turning in and turning out of these parklets at the corners. So there's those additional improvements at this intersection. The final thing on the safety is the speed. So how fast can somebody drive through this intersection? And this is called a speed profiles chart. Basically, each of the movements, the software calculates how fast a vehicle would make that movement, and on the chart here we've got somewhere between 12 and 23 miles per hour. So if you're moving straight through, it may be close to 25, 23 miles per hour, but if you're making that going around the circle, you're going to do that at much slower, about half that speed. Other benefits, kind of speaking to the livability. This picture is taken in the morning looking south on Dorset. It's back across the car wash entrance and across a couple houses as the school bus is pulling up. They'll have about a 50-minute or 50-second delay before they get up to the light. And just the lack of time idling is one of those major benefits, right? Somebody comes up to the intersection and then they have to hit the gas. That start and stop makes more noise. So for people in the area, there are just some ancillary benefits of this. About 70% reduction in the air pollution is what they've found from, studies have found from the roundabout use. So air pollution by way of emissions and other things in the area. So our kind of process to get to today. The city reached out to property owners that were most affected, those that are at the corners. The four corner properties as well as Troy Christian School, to collect some feedback from them on how are things working, what works about the intersection and what doesn't. And that really influenced our initial analysis and our layout of our alternatives. And then in late November, on the 28th, I believe, we invited them all to a meeting here at the city where we went through some of this information. We showed them the video, so I appreciate any of you that were here then for sitting through the video again. Showed them the video and kind of went through portions of this presentation and then really collected feedback from them about what works with the roundabout, what doesn't work about the roundabout, what things could we look to change. And then Jill and I have had several follow-up meetings with many of those property owners. We met with the school, and we met with both the southwest and the southeast quadrants to make sure that we were understanding what their concerns were, as those impacts, as we saw earlier, are mostly focused on those quadrants. And the school, to make this intersection work, will really need to move their drive farther to the west and open that distance up so that they're not backing up across into the intersection. So we were able to modify the plans to some extent. What's it? Yeah, right. And those alternatives, that feedback has really been factored into each of the alternatives. So it wasn't just roundabout, let's make this it. We took that feedback and have factored it into both alternatives that are on these boards and that you saw in the slides. So as we sit today, we maintain that preferred alternative. We make the recommendation of the roundabout as the preferred alternative for the intersection. The intersection is just a part of this project, and I know many of you live the rest of the way. And so there's some other changes that we'll talk about on this board and on the slides, but the recommendations that we're making are to change the pavement, we call it the pavement section, but to change the pavement width, to get to one 11-foot lane in each direction with brand new curbs and gutters, have a parking lane on the south side of the street, and then do reconstruction of the curbs, the catch basins, the drive aprons, and the sidewalks for the corridor. So there'll be all new concrete drive aprons, all new concrete sidewalk for the length of the corridor, including the little section of pink here that we did not include on that board. So that's the one spot that I think I know on the board we should have extended the sidewalk all the way to the end of the existing. We'll be making sidewalk along both sides, and it'll be a much more uniform look. So it'll look much more like this, and we can show you that plan. The same evaluation criteria of level of service, safety, and construction cost went into that recommendation as well. The number one driver of pedestrian level of service, how comfortable are you walking along the road, is how far is the road from you. And so by reducing that pavement width and using some parking areas that are not frequently used, we're able to increase the level of service as well as control the speeds along the corridor without causing it for you to take longer than it should to drive that section. So from a vehicular operation standpoint, it'll maintain the same. The reduction in the pavement width, reducing the speeds, is the biggest improvement in safety. We know that from a traffic calming standpoint, that's a safety improvement. And reducing the current construction cost is first as way of just not building as much. But then second, for all of the asphalt resurfacings that will happen over the years and any reconstruction of the infrastructure that's there, a reduced pavement section is cheaper for all of you as the city works to maintain it. So this section is what we have on the board. See, the existing is about 36 feet of pavement in between the curbs, and here we're recommending reducing that to the 11 and 11 is 22 and 30, and then we have a 1.5 foot gutter on this side, so 31.5. So it's about a 4.5 foot, if I did my math right, 4.5 feet reduction in that pavement width on the one side, and that extra space is given to the tree lawn here, increasing the distance on that north side of the road. These sections are looking eastbound, so if you're standing on the center of the road and you're looking to the east, pointing to the west, if you're looking to the east, that's how it works. So we have boards up here and are happy to go through those, but this shows the consistency of the corridor. There are a couple places now where I think the sidewalk was bumped around trees in the past, and it's kind of been upheaved a couple times, and it's been built around things that are there or not there anymore. The sidewalk today will be a straight shot in this all the way through a uniform section on both the north and the south sides of the road, allowing for some tree lawn areas between it, grass areas between it on both sides. So this slide-in board shows basically beginning, if this is the Mumford intersection in Ormond, and then continuing to the next one is for Crescent and for Red Cedar Drive right here. And then this is that end of the project location. So as far as next steps, we want to hear some questions from you about the project in general, and then we'll be able to hang around here. Like we said, we're here till 8 o'clock tonight. So if you have questions about your individual property, we have it on a board. May not be large enough, but we'll collect any of that feedback from you. And then obviously I have a stack of my business cards that I will leave here. And I know Jill has hers that are here as well. Right, so our phone numbers and things are on here. So if you want to write any of that down and not take a card with you, It's here. I'll leave this slide up for a little bit. We're going to work to finish our next rounds of design and hope to be finished with the design by about the end of March. And then we would go out, depending on how that schedule goes and how we're working through that, go out for construction starting as early as April, May, and want to be mostly under construction while school is closed again, either this year or wait a little bit longer into the fall and start the construction early spring, late fall this year, early spring next year, and then do most of the construction, particularly in the intersection, during next summer. Because again, we want to make sure that that intersection stays open during the school year and during those school months. So that's kind of, unless we have anything else, that's the information that we had prepared from a presentation standpoint. If anybody has overarching questions, be happy to take those. And would you kind of jot questions down? I appreciate that.
Yeah, and at this point, it's being recorded, so I don't know if we want to come up to the mic to make a statement, or if you guys just talk loud enough, we can all hear it. And
I can repeat it if you'd like.
Yeah.
If you want to hear the question.
Maybe that's. Mr. Swayder?
Yeah. Do I need to go up there?
No, you can stay there.
Okay, good.
We'll just repeat it.
You're loud enough. Thanks. Heading east on McKaig, you talked about moving the drive for Troy Christian further west.
Yes.
What is the speed coming over that bridge?
The speed today is 40. We would design it for 45 miles per hour. So the question for the purpose of the recording is, with the moving of the driveway of Troy Christian to the west, what is the speed coming over the bridge, correct? The design speed that we would use is 45 miles per hour for that. And so we've already checked sight distance to that. Let me run back to that. Let me see if I can get back to that slide real quick. We've checked the intersection sight distance. Was it? No, I'll go to this one. So this is the current entrance to Troy Christian. That doesn't allow for room for a left turn lane, and a dedicated left turn lane into Troy Christian is warranted through our traffic studies and our counts. So we're providing a turn lane, a left turn lane here, and about where the drive used to be, where there's still a gravel stub there to the old drive now, is where we would enter this new property. And we've coordinated this with the superintendent and worked this out. And so we hope, you notice the arrow here, right, that nobody is coming out here. But we have checked the sight distance. If you're sitting here looking back to the bridge, can you safely make a left-hand turn out of there? Certainly you'll be able to make a right-hand turn. And then if you're in this turn lane and you're turning left into here, we've checked that sight distance as well. And both meet the 45 miles per hour design speed, which is the speed limit in the county.
Plus, another thing that we will be doing as part of this project is we'll be actually along McKaig right now. There are no school zone signs or anything like that. So we'll be adding those as part of this project as well.
Are there other questions?
So
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
So the gutter section on the north side of McKaig.
Yes.
You're nearing that. How wide is that going to be? Like, not the lanes that they're driving, but like my gutter. Because I'm just concerned, I'm out there raking my leaves, and now I'm going to have cars coming closer to me on the gutter since you're widening it.
Yeah.
Than what it is right now.
Okay. I think I understand your question. So the question is really around, I'm going to stand on this side, ma'am, so I can. This is the existing condition up here.
Right.
And in the proposed condition, we have 11 feet from the center line of pavement. And then there's a foot, the curb and gutter is 1.5 feet of flat and then a 6-inch curb. Okay? And so there's a 6-inch gutter plate there. But when you're raking leaves, today the curb has been filled up some, and so we don't have the full 6-inch curb reveal. It's been reduced because of asphalt overlays over the years. They've kind of eaten into that. So this will have the full 6-inch curb height again to protect it. And then any leaf collection and things would all be done in this tree lawn instead of out in the pavement, like I believe it probably is today. You're probably raking out into the street today. But in this widened area here, we'd rather have you do that behind the curb instead of raking them out into the road, and then the city would pick them up from there.
And that would be similar for trash collection.
So the trash would be on the yard now?
Yeah, it would be right on the edge, yeah. Similar to like how West Main is, and actually where there's no parking at where Ridge tees into McKaig, some of those residents They put it right on in their tree lawn, what we call the tree lawn, or the grassy area between the sidewalk and the curb.
Okay. I think there was a question over here. Yes, sir.
I had two questions. First question is was there any analysis done on kind of the long-term cost savings of a roundabout over a traditional signalized intersection? I mean, we're losing the signals, we're losing the pavement. How much can we expect to have that cost savings over a period of time?
Yeah, the question was how much is the cost savings over a period of time for a roundabout as compared to the signal? No, we did not quantify and do a detailed analysis for this intersection. Installation costs from a budget standpoint, we would use about $175,000 for a new traffic signal. You saw the pavement was a little bit wider. Life cycle on a traffic signal? 10 years. 10 years. And yeah, so you'd be looking to replace it then. When we factor
maintenance, electricity.
Right, and so there's a recurring electric bill, right? And we would provide some pedestrian level lighting for the roundabout at the crossings. So there would be a little bit of electricity for that too, but it's the signal electricity would be higher, but then you've got the ongoing costs of maintaining those things and just keeping that going. From a roadway project standpoint, or roundabout really kind of functions just like regular roadway pavement. The state that issued that $800,000 grant gives you credit for 20 years of life on that. So, but in reality, you go 10 or 15, and then you do a resurfacing, and you keep moving that ball out a little bit. So you're not going to be doing a full replacement again in 20 years, certainly.
My second question is, once the roundabout's installed, has there been any research on whether adjoining property values increase, decrease, anything of that?
That I don't know the answer. Frank, do you?
They've shown that just with accessibility that it actually increases your property value. It's usually safer, and it also makes it from a feature as far as walkability, and depending on how you dress it up and add to there. So the safety component, it's not as loud, like Dan said. The speed reduction, the speed reduction is, the air quality increases and the sound goes down. So all that, it makes living in that area or doing business more attractive. So, yeah.
Did everybody hear that?
Okay. Yes, sir.
How many cars can be queued up making a left turn into the school parking?
The question is, and Paul, I'm going to turn to you on this one. The question is how many cars can be queued up in the school parking lane? We're looking at it here. I'll put it up on the screen so, well, I think I will. So more people can see it.
Approximately 5 to 6.
5 to 6.
5 to 6 cars?
Yeah.
And so it's part of that, even when they say that left turn was warranted as with the traffic counts, it's also to be noted right now. I think I know some people are here that live at that intersection. You know that essentially right now with the four-way stop, that the intersection stops functioning because of the vehicles that are trying to turn left into the school, and so bringing them out, so there'll be 5 or 6 vehicles being able to actually stop in that lane, queuing to make the left-hand turn, but also it's just a longer distance to the intersection that then essentially allows more vehicles to stack up before it affects that intersection operation.
The length of that turn lane is approximately 125 feet. So, yes, sir.
And do you have any numbers on pedestrians, first of all? I know that there's a number of pedestrians, maybe just during school times. And would that enhance pedestrian attractiveness? And the other thing is when it comes to bicycles. What's the comfort level of bicyclists going through these traditions?
So the question was around pedestrians and bicyclists. So to start that, first, in any of the geometric alternatives from a pedestrian standpoint, we plan to add the curb ramps on this southwest corner to kind of complete that, to allow it to be a full pedestrian movement. Paul, do you recall, did we have 140 pedestrians?
Yes, there was 140 over the course of the day.
So in the course of the day, there was 140 pedestrians that we counted on our cameras. Now that's every time in and out, right? What's that?
What's a day?
This 12 hours.
Yeah, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. is when we counted.
Is that what you did on the 12 trucks? Was 7?
No, it's 12
per hour.
It was 12 trucks, so 12 articulated, so the ones with the trailer.
Day of the week? Oh.
We counted on Tuesday.
You're claiming that there's only 12 Honda trucks that go through that intersection?
We had 12 articulated trucks that went through there. We had some box trucks. That's just dead wrong.
Do you know what the number is?
Counting, but there's
Okay.
way more than 10 because I can stand in the building and listen to them go through.
You're late at night for me.
Yeah.
Okay, so yes, our counts are from 7A to 7P, right?
Well, no. So we counted 7A to 7P, and then we only processed the video for 4 hours of that. So the trucks actually are the 12-hour, or the 12 and the 4 hours. That's the number that we counted.
So it was,
yes.
Okay, so it was in a 4-hour period.
Correct.
And those 4 hours are the peak 4?
Yes.
The 2 in the morning,
yes.
2 in the evening?
Yes.
Is that right? Okay.
Yes.
So yes, more than 12 during the day.
But then we
in that,
get through
but
these.
dispersed through it.
Yeah. And all of the designs take the geometry of the truck into account. So the volume of the truck will not hinder the operation of any of those designs.
Yeah. Okay. So that was the pedestrian part of the question, right? The bicyclist part of the question. 2 options as mentioned in the video. One, if you're not comfortable riding through the roundabout, then you could exit and walk your bike through the crosswalks as if you were a pedestrian. However, it's a single lane roundabout that operates somewhere between 12 miles per hour and 25 miles per hour. Just staying in the lane, right? The sharrows that are in the lane today, if you just stay in the lane and occupy that lane as a vehicle, you're really not going to hold anybody up until you get through the intersection. They're not going to move it much faster than you are. So you might actually have to get on the brakes a little bit, but don't hold me to that. Did that answer the question about that? Yes.
In Troy, do bicyclists, are they on the street or on the sidewalk?
On the street, over 13 years of age.
So you would not ride your bike on the sidewalk. You can walk it on the sidewalk, right? That's legal. So yeah, if you were to take it off, if you're coming southbound, you take it here and you could walk it through the intersection and then get back on. If you're not comfortable riding it through on the street. Yes, sir.
The pink is sidewalk, right?
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Don't we generally assess for sidewalk? Are we going to bear those costs?
So we assess for sidewalks if they haven't already been a part of a sidewalk program. This area has been a part of a sidewalk program.
So they've already paid one. So,
yep.
So since we're going to fix it,
yep.
or allegedly fix it, then that's,
yeah.
We'll pay that cost.
Yes, yep. So no assessments.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you discuss the access to the 4 corners on the corners, please?
Yes, the question was, can we discuss the access to the 4 corners of the intersection? One of the major benefits of the roundabout that you don't have in another intersection is that you have the ability to make those U-turns, right? So you think about it kind of being a U-turn intersection. So to start here at this northeast corner, this driveway on the north side on Dorset will remain a full access, left in, left out. You can go any direction from it. When you come out to the south, this is a right in, we call them right in, right out only. So somebody coming from this way in McKaig would come in, and if you're in the parking lot, you can only make a right turn out. We won't allow you to go left out of here. If you're in this quadrant, the northwest quadrant,
but
yes.
You won't be able to make a left out, but
show how you make the left movement.
Yeah, so if you were coming out of here and you wanted to go into Troy, if you're coming out of this parking lot and you wanted to go east, you make the right and you come around the circle and now you're continuing on. And so you're not crossing over. You know, the left-hand turn out of here, you're crossing over this.
Right
and so
now you're
another one of those
2 lanes of traffic, I believe, because there's a
left turn lane.
Left turn lane and a through lane there now.
Right.
It's a safer left turn movement for you.
So in effect, the left turn looks like make a right and come around and go around the circle and continue on. If you're in the northwest quadrant, again, this drive up here remains a full access. If you're coming out of this drive here, you can't go left, so you're going to go right. And if you want to go any of the directions like north again, you come down and you make the circle and you go up. So here particularly, there's fewer lanes to cross again, right? That left turn coming out of here, you're this through lane, the left turn lane, and then you're turning into here. Now you're just looking for one vehicle coming from this direction. Make this right and go around.
So just to clarify something else on this, so the pink is the sidewalks, the green is green space, grass, the white is concrete, curb. So like when you talk about when Dan mentions you can't make a left, you won't be able to make a left unless you're willing to drive over a 6-inch curb.
Yeah, we know, right. It's a 6-inch high curb, concrete median, basically, in the road.
So if we go southwest and southeast.
So for the southwest quadrant.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
Will the FedEx trucks and stuff be able to come out and go across that? Is that any different than the roundabout?
Say that again.
FedEx.
Yeah. So delivery trucks.
So they can drive right over that.
Well, no, that will be different. So that would be just like hopping a curb. If you're going to drive over that median, you're going to be like hopping the curb.
It's not like the roundabout part where it's just a...
Correct. Correct. So these splitter islands prevent left turns across them. You're not driving across the splitter islands here or here or here. You know, any of these in the center. And so somebody that's coming into here, they come up and they enter in. This person, anybody leaving here, will be making a right out and going around the circle.
And that's going to be big enough for FedEx and UPS to make a right out of there without driving over the curbs that are right up against the green space.
Those are details that meet the city's.
Yeah. So we'll use the city commercial drive standards for those. We do have truck turning templates that we have applied in other places, and so we can do that if that's a concern for that corner.
Yeah, and we will do truck turning templates.
The entrance to the southwest quadrant, we've worked quite a bit with this property owner. You would enter everybody enters this site from this drive on Dorset. And okay, so you can make a right into here, but this drive on McKaig is right in, right out. You come in here, and then you can exit, and if you're going to go to the left again, you would go around the circle like this and continue that way. If you're going any of the other directions, you're using that intersection there as well. And then, as I said on McKaig, this is a right in, right out from there. At the southeast quadrant, this parking lot, particularly in this quadrant, this side is a one-way. And so everybody would enter in here. If you're parking in here, then you're backing out and continuing around and exiting here onto McKaig, which has full left or right turning out of. But this becomes an exit, or remains as an exit really. And then this is the entrance to the site. And so someone that's coming from town and wants to get into here would go around the circle and use this left turn lane that we've provided here to enter and then exit their way out of there. So that's...
None of the properties are going to lose any of their property. I mean, they're not going to have.
So yeah, that's not quite accurate. I mean, there are right-of-way takes that the right-of-way lines today are somewhere right in here, and they continue up into the corner, and so there is a small take from the corner here.
Okay.
But if
it's approximately like 500 to 1,000 square feet. I mean, so it's not a huge impediment. We haven't started detailed design of this. We wanted to get through this meeting, understand concerns, make sure we can accommodate concerns before we would proceed on with design.
So the question about the loss, right? There is an entrance right here, the southwest quadrant, that is too close to the intersection for safety, and so in all of the alternatives we've recommended that to be removed. And the same for these two drives. There's one here and there's one here that are right at this intersection. Again, too close to the intersection to be safely operated, and so in all of the recommendations, all the alternatives, we've recommended those for closure as well, and have done our best to work with the property owners on making this, giving some more space in here and making this something that can work efficiently. But at the same time, the guy at the southwest corner saying, anything you can do to stop people from cutting through here would be good. And so this hopefully accomplishes some of that too. So yes, sir.
Probably said it, I missed it. So if I'm headed north on Dorset and I want to turn into the apartment complex.
North on Dorset.
Okay.
Okay.
And I want to turn left into that, now go down to that apron. How do I get into that entrance?
This entrance, you don't. Right. You would continue up to here, and then on their site, come back down if you wanted to do that.
So that's an on-site, another entrance into that spot?
Yes, it is.
Okay, that's what Bill and I can figure out.
Can I address a couple things that are right now situations? Because I know this is down the road. Today I was going to turn left into that where I live at the corner.
Okay. The northwest.
I was going north on Dorset,
okay,
like you said. And, you know, the lane that has the arrows to turn left.
Yeah, yeah,
There.
and then,
Yeah,
Yeah,
there was
two-way.
a car coming
south.
at me at the same time in that lane.
Okay.
Were you right in here, ma'am?
The two-way left
Yeah,
turn.
yes.
Yep.
Yeah, that's very dangerous.
That's.
So
And I
they were
actually
probably
didn't see-
coming towards you to get into the lane to turn left at the intersection.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
And I didn't see them until I was just about
okay.
very close. So it doesn't happen often, but it's not a good situation.
So with this alternative, they won't want to go in that, there won't be a left-hand
No,
turn
I
there,
realize
you know?
that, yeah.
With the signal or with the future, if the four-way stop were to stay, there would be that potential, but it would be striped as such to be, you know, actually as you see it right now, the way that we would, LJB would recommend this, the stacking and the striping would be that a right-hand turn, a left-hand turn into that first drive
Right here.
wouldn't necessarily be a preferred option either.
Right.
You wouldn't have a concrete barrier there to keep you from making that movement, but you would still be going across two lanes of traffic and you wouldn't have that left turn lane that actually that exists right now there.
Yeah, so.
There's no left turn lane right there. now.
There isn't?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's 3 lanes of traffic right there, all going south.
Okay.
Not
It's
closest to the corner there.
Up here is where that starts.
Yeah. Northern one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to expound on, you know, when you have that two-way left turn lane that's on the north side there that's existing that Dan's showing, and it transitions into a left turn lane.
Right here.
What you're doing is you're trading off safety for operation. So to allow left turns to get out of the main northbound travel stream to get out of the way so more traffic can go through. Right. So in this existing condition, what the city has implemented is a pro-operation at a chance of a safety issue popping up for in a very, very unlikely event that 2 left turn vehicles are going to experience what you will.
At that transition point.
At that transition point. And there's that, you're exactly right, there's that confusion of whose lane is that? Is it the turner into the driveway or is it the left turner at the intersection?
Right.
So the good news is, you know, if we're able to implement the roundabout, we no longer need a left turn lane at the intersection, so now we can channelize that and allow that to be for driveway users.
Yeah, I understand it.
Okay. But, you know, that's just one of those things, you know, we have a tool in our toolbox. There's positives and negatives about choosing each thing that we do, and that unfortunately is what happens when you transition from a dedicated left turn lane at an intersection to having driveways so close. So again, on any of the alternatives, we want to get those driveways away from the intersection. The driveways having impact on intersections is usually beyond just the main left turning crashes. Those vehicles turning out of driveways are what causes more accidents than any other, or more dangerous ones after the left turners inside the intersection. So that's why on all these alternatives we have looked to make sure driveways are pushed as far back towards the property lines as possible for those.
But that doesn't solve the problem for the northern, none of these solve the problem for the northern driveways, because there are people going south and people going north that want to make left turns at the driveways that are virtually right across from each other.
Yes.
So you want to line them up though.
Yeah, so.
And the other thing is you guys keep referring to increased safety, but at the beginning you said there was what, 3 accidents and.
There's been 20 accidents in the past 3 years.
And none of them serious.
That's correct. We did have incorrect information. When we met with the stakeholders, we shared a number of 7 crashes, and that was incorrect. We went back and we checked that number again, and it was 20 instead. So I apologize for that misinformation.
What kind of accidents were there?
Paul, do you know that information?
Anything serious?
They were mostly property damage.
Yeah. So
we were not dangerous accidents. Again, this is not a safety project.
Right. We acknowledge that there's it's an operational. Can we make an operational improvement to reduce delay? Without, we want to just check, let's not make it more dangerous than it is today. So the question about the driveways, and just to kind of close that, yes, there is people that are turning left into here do have the option of using this lane and turning in, and somebody that's entering this driveway will be coming southbound and does have the option to turn left. The advantage of of the roundabout solution is that then it limits the people that are coming southbound and using this to people that are using that driveway, which are certainly less during the day than people that are going to come in here to turn left to go on McKaig. And so just by reducing the numbers, that's where we see the advantage of limiting it.
I don't think it's a major issue, and I don't think anything you're going to do is going to change the unlikelihood of something like that.
A head-on crash there. Okay. Yes, sir.
Looking at the narrowing of McKaig, I was just curious if it was ever considered, with Troy Care and how many emergency vehicles, how that is going to impact, the flow of traffic. Because right now you have at least a couple every day. And at least. So, yeah. So I'm just curious what research was done to make sure that when cars have to pull off, they have a safe clearance.
Yeah, I don't know that we specifically looked at this section. We tend to want to make sure that any lane of traffic that we ever constrain, so if we're going to put curbs on both sides of a road, we want it to be 16 feet wide so that a vehicle can pull over and an emergency vehicle can still get past them, right?
That's a very heavy.
There's a nursing home there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ambulances
that run past?
Probably 5 a night, at least between 5 and 10.
Yeah.
Okay. And so that's in the evening?
Yes.
If between 5 p.m. and 10 p.m. But that's just when you're there, right, and paying attention.
That's an all day.
Right. Yeah.
We did.
Yeah.
We are coordinating with the fire to point Gary Stanley out. No, we are coordinating with the fire department, and we had talked to them about this talking about the corridor. So we'll continue to work with them and talk to them about it to make sure that we're not creating another safety issue while we're getting rid of something else. We will say typical though down this corridor. Now I don't know about. I will say whenever we drove down it, I had a lot of the field operations guys. Every time we were down it, it was like, is anybody parked on any side of the street? Where are we parked? Who's parked there? There was not hardly any utilization on the north side, as you guys know. You guys live on that street, and then the utilization of the parking on the south side wasn't very high either. And so it does appear that there would be definitely sufficient room for people to get over to allow for ambulance and things like that. But we'll continue to look at it and work with the fire department to make sure, again, that we're not creating another hazard.
So by providing the parking lane on the south, the worst case scenario in that emergency situation is you have a vehicle that's parked on the south side of the road, right, that's there already. And then vehicles coming from either direction, and somebody has an ambulance behind them. The person on the north side, on the north lane, so if we have a vehicle parked here, this person in the westbound lane may not recognize I'm parked right across from the parked car, so they're going to scoot over. But somebody that's in this eastbound lane, can recognize, hey, I'm not going to park right next to that parked car. And so there's space at least for a vehicle to get through, just by vehicles, allowing that gap between them. So we want to just make sure that we're not boxing anybody in to the point of it's parked full on the south side and there's no place for a vehicle to get out of the way. So that emergency vehicle, even if it's coming westbound, could use this unoccupied at that space eastbound lane to get through, lights and flashers and all of that stuff on. So we think the section can work, but it is a question that we had not looked at, to the level of how exactly would that happen.
Well, I'm just saying, because you're saying you're concerned about the speeding, but so you're narrowing it.
Yep.
Which, okay, but there's cops on McKaig all the time. So I guess my concern is
where
in the Haven parking lot. By the school. So I'm just curious if it's that bad. Why are there always cops? The logic doesn't really make sense to me.
So I guess is your point that your experience would be that people operate at much more like 25 miles per hour?
I think it varies, but my point is that there's cops there all the time now anyway. So.
Yeah, McKaig Avenue, the average speed is 35, 40 mile an hour.
Yeah.
So
4 o'clock in the evening is 40 mile an hour for McKaig.
So our goal for the project is to use the infrastructure that's out there to encourage compliance instead of needing city enforcement efforts on a regular basis. Now, whether that plays out that way or that's an enforcement choice. But we hope when we get the opportunity to work on these projects and the opportunity to look at a corridor, we hope to be able to use the infrastructure to enforce the speed without needing additional enforcement and tickets and the police time and effort that it takes to do that. So that's a goal. And that comment about it being 35 to 40 miles per hour is more of what we've heard about the experience along the corridor. So.
Did you have a question, ma'am?
I did.
Okay.
When you go back to the turnabout.
Yep.
And you have an ambulance come up, and they want to get into one of the apartments on either side, they usually would take the first drive to go to the Dorset apartments on the left here. They would take that first side only because that way their back of their ambulance is facing the door and they can get their patient into that ambulance. Or now they have to go up and come.
They would come up here and come down, you're saying?
Yeah, that's going to be hard for the ambulance.
So today, to understand your comment, today when they come in, they would make a left into here.
That's correct.
And then stop about there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because that's where the front door is at, to the building.
We'll work with fire. We'll work with fire and ambulance about that as well.
Okay.
We'll talk to them about that to make sure that we're not creating some.
Yeah, then even the people on the other side, they have an ambulance there an awful lot.
Okay.
Here?
Yes.
And do they park on the street?
They park on the street.
Okay, yeah, so one of the things that we've tried to do is we want to maintain this narrow throat as you get through the pedestrian so that you've got a narrower distance to cross. But then we'll work to open this back up. So there's probably even a further refinement of this that would allow for this curb line to come a little farther south and open more parking. This property owner, if you recall, ma'am, in that meeting, had said, I don't think that many people use that, but we will continue to work with that and make it, as much as it can be. And if it's an ambulance concern, certainly we would have that area available. Yes, sir.
Is it a concern on the roundabout on north and south? It's 35 miles an hour. East and west is 25 miles an hour. Is there any concern that because of that, or also if there's more flow going north and south than east and west, that the people on east and west cannot get into the roundabout because there's always somebody in there? Is that a concern?
It would be similar. I'm just sorry. I don't think it's going to be much. It's going to be similar to downtown. So the traffic circle downtown. The major roads downtown is West Main and South Market. East Main has half the vehicles of either of those legs. So I don't think that when you're sitting on East Main trying to get into the circle that you feel any undue delay.
But you got traffic lights and you're running on traffic lights.
Well, the traffic lights on the circle don't affect the vehicles getting into the circle.
Sure it does.
Marty?
You have traffic lights a block out though, and 2 blocks out, that when those traffic lights are red, it stops traffic coming in, and those other lanes have a chance to get into the circle downtown. You won't have that in this scenario.
Yeah, so when you operate this roundabout, right, and we look at these, let me get to my speed profiles. So somebody that's going straight through in this section is in a 12 to 15 mile per hour range.
But it's also the feeding into the...
Yeah, right. So somebody else is coming up, but everybody is yielding. You're not needing to stop, but you need to yield. And so the gap that you need to find is just, for this person to be able to move, is just somebody that's coming south. And if anybody makes this right turn, that's opened the gap. And so we've found, and I'll look to my 2 traffic guys here, but we found that those gaps open up in a roundabout like this. Even, the smaller the size, the slower speeds come down. We don't have that concern. Our software didn't show us that concern when we modeled it. Is that...
The software shows, you might have a 6 to 7 second delay on all 4 quadrants. Right now on the all-way stop, you've got, in the PM peak, you've got 50+ second delay. So that 6 seconds is the delay to go through the intersection. It's not sitting, and that is inclusive of the traffic delay of you sitting in the intersection and waiting for it. So it's very different. You don't experience actually sitting. It's that brief pause as you're looking to the left to find that gap to work through the intersection.
However, upon all your studies, it does not take into consideration the human element, which they're looking at the phone or doing whatever, they're distracted and so forth. And none of your studies take that into consideration. I watched that intersection for 45 years, and I look at the habits of the people and not so much the, and it's completely different than what your numbers are showing.
So this intersection, you're going to drive it, and you're not going to pick up the phone. It's not like you're at a traffic light where you pick up your phone out of your console and you check something. You know, you're going to actively move to the intersection.
You're going to have the phone in your hand, just like you are down West Main, but you're not going to you're not going to have to stop and sit there and wait.
Right.
You aren't. You're not going to have the 30 seconds, the minute delay wait. And actually, when you're talking about, so if you look at the actual distance you have to travel, you're talking about to get through, like to get into the drive lane. I mean, the width of the circle is, the drive lane is what, 16, 17 feet? I mean,
that's those widths, right?
So,
it's a 16-foot width.
Yeah, so I mean, I just feel like the distance you have to travel is not that far, and I just don't think that there'll be, I mean, I trust the models. Models are created based on reality.
On the data.
Ma'am, to the efficiency that you gain from putting a roundabout in, it actually creates more opportunities and more gaps within there because you don't have the stacking, so you never have more than a few cars that will stack in there. So they're always going through it, and even though the speeds are lower, the efficiency's higher, so it creates more gaps for you to go in there. So you never have that constant platoon that could be maybe leaving.
Doesn't that change varied on the size and diameter of the roundabout?
Absolutely, yes. Yes.
Ma'am, you've been waiting patiently, thankfully. Thank you.
My concern would be the increase of traffic that I feel is going to happen in the next couple of years. If Troy schools build the new elementary schools on the west side, we're going to see an increase of traffic in this area. With the new housing development that keeps going on the west side by Concord, we're going to see an increase. So if your numbers aren't, if people in the neighborhood are saying your numbers are not accurate, and we have this increase, are there going to be future plans? I mean, where's the cost come into the wear of this area if there's more cars? Or are we going to have future plans where we have to have alternative routes now around Troy to accommodate this increase of traffic in this area?
So to speak to growth, like we said, our counts showed, look back at historical, was flat, and I agree, you know, there may be an opportunity for future growth. That's obviously what we potentially want, is to see traffic volumes going up, not down. That's a sign of a vibrant community. High growth for an area is 2% of traffic per year. If you remember what Dan said, 1,900 vehicles per hour can circulate the roundabout. We have 1,400. So that's an increase of almost, I'll do the math quickly, 30 to 35%. So take 35% divided by 2, that's 17 times that amount of traffic. So there is a capacity in this roundabout to handle another 15 to 20 years of high growth of traffic. So there is adequate capacity within this roundabout.
And the other thing that we found a document that there was turn signal, the analysis, and that was 2002, right?
Correct.
So when he says, like, although it has grown tremendously out west on McKaig, west of town, the 2002 numbers are pretty consistent to what they are today. Right. And I would agree. I thought, no way. I was baffled when they said that, when they compared it, the 2002 numbers to the 2017, and how the traffic through this intersection hasn't tremendously changed. Again, I thought, no way, but the numbers are, I obviously wasn't here in 2002, but the numbers are.
Yeah, I'm kind of unique because I grew up there, right? Okay. Not in the house I'm at now, almost across the way.
Okay.
So I actually grew up there, you know, I'm 40, so you do the math.
Yeah.
And it seems like there's a world amount more traffic.
Okay.
So when you're saying from 02, it's like, man, I'm shocked to hear that myself, because I can remember growing up there, and it's like, it seemed like we just did whatever we wanted to do out there.
Right, and so maybe we were just looking at McKaig, we were also looking at Dorothy.
So what I think is probably happening, you're probably noticing, is the overall volume over the course of the day is roughly the same. You're probably noticing is a higher peaking. So your AM and your PM is getting worse, and that is what we're trying to address. We're trying to address those peak hour conditions.
Some of which would have, 40 years, would have predated Troy Christian.
Right. Yeah.
Right. I mean, so yeah, there's a lot of that, and so Troy Christian contributes a lot to that peak, with all the drop-offs that come northbound and make that left. And today, back, here's that drive, not a long distance before it's backing into this intersection and people are waiting here like, can I make this turn or can I not? So that's some of the growth. Go ahead, sir.
The data and the numbers you're throwing at us, was it all taken off roundabouts in general or the different kind of roundabouts?
The data that we're presenting.
The 1900 versus the 1400?
Yeah, all the numbers you're throwing at us.
So the 1900 is a federal highway threshold based off the highway capacity manual. So that comes out of their equations for calculating capacity of a single lane roundabout. The 1400 is what we counted back in October. So on that Tuesday, middle of October.
Right.
And then the geometric stuff, those are just the things that federal highway, ODOT, various agencies recommend for geometric layout based off the conditions and the travel volumes that we have.
So is this the average size roundabout for a single lane?
It's actually on the smaller side.
This one is on the smaller side.
Yes.
Yes.
And then I know the city of Hilliard's had some issues with their roundabouts, lots of accidents. Have you looked at that at all?
His Hilliard, they had multi-lane, right? So multi-lane roundabouts increase the complexity quite a bit. I mean, even just comparing the circle.
I think they're considering tearing them out.
For the multi-lane locations.
So that's probably the biggest point is that they're multi-lane.
It was a very similar.
Yeah, this is all single lane, which is the big difference.
But the intersection before was very similar to this in terms of the roundabout.
Do you have a specific location that was this way?
It's on the northeast side.
Cemetery.
Cemetery? Okay.
Similar, do they have new schools out there?
Yes.
Okay.
I know the citizens are I just don't want you guys to want to
Yeah.
No, I think the single lane approaches will help that and eliminate some of the driver confusion.
3 accidents a year to 30.
Oh, starting to lag a little bit.
Are there, Bruce?
Mainly, is this going to try to correct a problem that we have for 180 days out of the year, and specifically for 2 hours a day? Is this the biggest concern? Because there is no problem at the intersection on the weekends or during the summer. It's only whenever the school is in session.
I've only been with the city for 4 years, but I'm finding documents back to 2000 that there's been documented concerns and issues and that a signal needs to go in, there needs to be some kind of improvement at this intersection. So I would disagree that there's not an issue at this intersection. Maybe the residents, maybe you outcry that there is not an issue, but I think that the amount of traffic that goes through this intersection, the backup that we saw from the schools being in session, I think there is, so when you say 180 days, that's 50% of the, but that's 50% of the time. So if we're going to say we have the issue for 50% of the time, are we going to make everybody suffer 50% of the time and not make any improvements?
Yeah, it's not 50% of the time. It's only 4 hours a day.
It's only 2 hours a day.
Yeah, that's 8 of 50%.
Ruth?
Well,
Sorry, but I've lived on that corner now, on the second floor of the Dorset Apartments for 10 years. And I remember my husband calling whoever was in charge probably about 8 years ago, asking if that corner would not warrant a stoplight. And he sat out there a lot and observed the traffic all day. And in my opinion, it's been, Dorset is heavier than McKaig on a more steady basis. And even on weekends, it just depends. But yeah, it's true that there are some periods of time when you can just go right through, breeze through. But I think it appears to me that it's increased in the 10 years, and certainly very loud.
The comment,
noise level is bad.
The comment that has kind of stuck with me the most on the operational end is during meetings with the property owner, his patrons have asked that they not be scheduled during that time frame in the afternoon. And so he has a portion of that time that it's not available, that he isn't able to carry a full patient load. And we would hope that the infrastructure would not cause that. We would hope that the city is able to, we're able to provide a project, if we have the opportunity, that he could have a full day of keeping people coming to be, patron at his business. So that's kind of the comment that stuck with me the most. Surprised me when he said it, that the traffic coming out of the school and everybody making this right turn through there has made this operation in and out and getting out of there. And then the cut-throughs coming through the parking lot, such a big deal. And so in either case, we think we've done what we can to address that condition so that after the project is complete, I would hope that he doesn't get that request anymore.
So I think one thing to look at when you look at traffic operations, the roundabout allows you to adjust traffic flow during the day. So when there's less traffic, you move through it quicker. When there's more, you might wait a little bit. And our analysis shows you still have a level of service of A. Remember your report card A to F, even during the busiest hour of the day. Look at traffic signal or an all-way stop. What's happening in those hours that aren't high traffic, you're now introducing stops that are not necessary. So I can do my best to time a traffic signal, but every so often that thing's going to cycle and you could catch that and wait. So it might be a time of day when the traffic signal is not warranted. We did look at a traffic signal that was warranted. It was only warranted for the 4-hour rule. It did not meet 8 hours, much to your point. It doesn't need that high level of traffic control throughout the entire day. So, however, you're going to be burdened with an operating traffic signal 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. The roundabout allows the flexibility. Your gaps shorten, your gap acceptance, your willingness to move in there when traffic is slower, you'll take that gap. Now when there's no traffic, you'll move through the roundabout much quicker because you look left and there's no one there. So the roundabout allows for that flexibility of operations no matter what your demand is. It works best both at high volume, so as you approach 1,900 vehicles per hour in the roundabout entering, as well as when you have almost zero. And you're not forced with undue delay and waiting at an intersection.
So to use the 12% time that was thrown out, 12%, the roundabout helps control that the same as effectively as the traffic signal would. Right. And in the rest of the time, 88% of the time, you come up and you're just going straight through as if it's a bend in the road. Right. And so there's no delay. Whereas if you're on McKaig and you're going to stop at a light and wait for it to recognize you're there and move. So the roundabout in that way handles the low volume adequately and better than a stop or a light does as well.
And remember, the other thing about this is that we told you, Dorset and McKaig are both balanced. Traffic's even. So look around the roundabout. You're not going to have one direction abnormally at any point in time. It's going to be relatively close, and that's what is going to make that roundabout work very well. If we had a location where the traffic on Dorset was double what McKaig was, the roundabout might not be as appealing of an option because we're going to undo and slow down more Dorset traffic relative to McKaig. So this is going to allow traffic, the delay, to be shared and balanced at all times.
And this is just a general assumption, but when I look at this, we're restricting flow, we're restricting access, and we're speeding up miles per hour, right?
No. Well, that depends on, so
we're going from a stop to a constant flow. We've restricted access everywhere. We funneled the roads down, we've taken away overflow lanes. That's my concern.
Right.
You're restricting everything.
So you're stopping everybody, and we're having levels of service E. 50 seconds of delay versus 8 seconds during the peak period of time. So that even though that slow-moving traffic is circulating, but it's moving at less than 20 miles an hour at all times through the roundabout. 25 once you get to the outer piece is when you re-accelerate. So typically around 12 miles an hour, you're moving very slow. But the person that stops makes the Hollywood stop. We all know what that is. When you barely come to a stop, how much are you truly slowing down? You're getting down to 7, 8 miles an hour. So if there's no one there, you're still not coming to a complete stop. There's still an opportunity for you to miss the stop sign, you to not make the stop that you're supposed to.
You're saying now?
Yeah, anytime.
Well,
that's where the crashes happen.
And then when you talk about, do you want to talk about access management? Any of these options that we're proposing, when you talk about restriction and restricting movements, and I don't know if you're specifically talking about us closing off driveways or anything like that, but we would be recommending that those are not safe now.
I believe 7 of the 20 accidents were related to the driveways, if I remember the number exactly.
And so we would be recommending that those be closed off, moved, relocated anyways, regardless of what option we go with. Because we're improving the curb and the gutters and the drive approaches. And so in improving those, we would want to improve the safety of people going around this intersection.
Is there one similar like this that we can drive through?
235 and 41, I just drove it today coming back from Springfield. There were 8 cars on, I was on 41, there were 8 cars on, there were probably 5 cars on 235. It took less than 10 seconds. I mean, it's probably, that's exaggeration. They zoomed through really quick and then I could continue on.
And it's a single lane?
That's a single lane, 41, 235.
The biggest difference would be speed.
Yeah, the big difference, that's a high speed.
5 to 6 days a week.
So the difference with that one is you've got high-speed approaches on all sides, and then the footprint of that is larger, allowing those vehicles to move through there.
And what about is there businesses and apartments on each corner?
No, that is a rural high-speed, and that one was put in to solve a safety issue.
Yeah, so the businesses and the access points, in this signal condition, if you're leaving this property, right, you're leaving here, if you want to go left and go west, if there's somebody sitting there, right, you're coming across this lane and looking through this vehicle to get that gap into there. Crossing lanes to make those lefts is just not as easy or as safe as just coming out here and making this turn and go around. Out of where?
With the roundabout.
Right, no.
Yeah, but you don't need to go left because you just make this right turn and you go around the circle and then you go left.
Right, but you were saying that.
Yeah.
Right, so on this condition, if the only way to go left, I can't go right here and make a U-turn in this intersection. I have to go around the block. You know, if I want to make a right turn out of this, which is that same safe movement, I got to go here, but then I don't have a way to get turned around and go back the other way. That U-turn is a major advantage in the intersection. The ability to make those, get you out of the property to the right, and then get around and through the intersection and then continue in the direction you want to go. That's one of the major advantages we see. Yes, sir.
When you look at the signalization, could you describe what those signals would look like? For example, would there be dedicated signalization for the left-hand lanes? And if there are, wouldn't that add to the time people have to wait to go through that intersection?
Correct. So with the signal, you would have left turn phases for all the approaches. So with that extends the cycle length. And what that means is, rather than sitting there and waiting, with us having to put left turn phases, I now, instead of having a 90-second cycle length, I have to add an extra minute. So that becomes 150 seconds in order to have all my reds and all my yellows and to safely clear traffic through the intersection. And that's what I'm talking about. During the day, you have all that undue delay, and you can be sitting there waiting for that 150-second cycle length. If you pull up at the end of the green and you just miss it, oh, whoops, it's just like you go to any, now I got to wait through that entire cycle. And if you look around, and we've all been there before, you're at a traffic light and you're like, I just missed that, and there's no one coming by me. It's the most frustrating thing when it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, there's no one around me. There's that inefficiency built in. And again, that traffic signal with all those left turn phases, and some of them can be skipped and we can program that, but you still have to cycle through the yellows and the reds for the unused cycles that aren't being used. And there's minimum green time. If I call it a phase, then I got to have it run for at least 8 to 10 seconds to know which movement it is, and there's just inefficiency built in. And there's nothing that we can do to work around that. Those are some minimums that I can set. But
just go up Dorset and try to turn left on the gate. And when that light flips, you're stuck there for forever. If you're stuck, look, this, I'll reserve count for my comments, but this makes perfect sense. If you only got this spread of a difference, what a big cost.
And that line, when it turns green for the green arrow, you got 10 seconds. You're lucky if you get
to 10 seconds. She has not missed it ever.
And that is the same way at the intersection of Myers out there. That line is bad. Yeah.
So we're at 7:30, and I want to respect anybody's individual. If anybody wants to come up and look at individual property owners together. So if there's 1 or 2 more questions for the good of the group. I guess, ma'am, I saw your hand go up. Did you have one?
The traffic at 10 after 5, if you're coming on to Dorset and you want to go left, right, or go straight, the traffic is backed up clear past the car wash.
Right.
I mean, that is, it would take me sometimes 2 or 3 minutes just to get up to the light to be able to turn red. If the traffic isn't moving on McKaig, I live on McKaig, sometimes cars are backed up clear back to my house. I can't even get into my roadway.
Right.
So if you put in a stoplight there, that is going to be a daily occurrence because if a car is stopped on backing up for 1 or 2 minutes on McKaig,
Right.
it's going to back all the way up the street
Right.
at 5 o'clock, 10 after
Right.
5. When they close part of the city, if there's any kind of detour thing and people have to detour on McKaig, it can go down 3 or 4 houses past my house.
Right. Ma'am, did you have the last?
Yeah, I just have a question. When will a final decision be made?
The next week. That's our goal, in the next week.
Okay. So we let's set the rest of the boards up with the individuals, and can we get these house lights back up? And thank you all. If some of you are ready to leave now, thank you all very much for coming and participating. Like I said, my contact information was on this, and I have my cards. And Jill's contact information is on the city website. So if you just want to have any other questions, please